Jake is getting ready to rile up. The house of Judah is getting ready to turn up in due time. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor that's due to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak, Kodash, double honors to the elders and apostles of the great millstone who rule well. Peace and blessings to the 144,000 and the hopeful elect. Shalom Barakatham. And I'm referring to the recent event, something, I forget the guy's name, Hinton Jr., who was killed by a police officer. And his father just crashed out, man. All right, now, the reason I bring this out, obviously, because it's prophecy, okay? The Lord speaks about a time, or he describes the house of Judah as a crouching lion, okay? I mean, actually, I'll find that. And why is that? When you look at lions, is it couching? Salakia. When you look at lions in the animal kingdom, what you'll notice is, or even if you just look it up, they spend a lot of their time laying around. Okay, most of the day of a lion is spent just lounging around, just chilling. You know, and why is that? Because when they eventually get up to hunt, they expend a lot of energy. You're talking about, you know, tons and tons of force coming out of this animal that is not only, you know, 400 to 600 pounds at any given time, but can just beat anything off the line, you know, and it can rip things in shreds, man. And so they conserve a lot of their energy. And when they hunt, they usually go at nighttime, all right? And this is why the scriptures refer to the house of Judah that way, because Judites have the characteristic of being chill, being low-key until they're not, okay? You know, I myself kind of feel like my spirit is that way. I'm very reserved and chill, but then there's a point where, you know, I get afraid of my own anger sometimes because, you know, I just don't know how it's going to go, you know, so I practice discipline and emotional control. But we're getting to the point now, there's no way to go. Like they say, you corner a cat, he's going to eventually just lash out at you. But this cat is a lion, okay? And what Esau doesn't realize is the only reason he's able to tame us is because the Spirit of the Lord ordained it so, okay? The Lord put the Edomites over us, okay? That's why there's been a passive spirit to not rebel, essentially, all right? And I believe that's part of the reason why he passed all of these so-called civil rights is to pacify us, okay? Remove us from the home. So he de-incentivized us to have anything to fight for, like family, okay? And now fast forward today, half of so-called black men don't even have kids. So their motivation, there's no incentive, you know, for these things. Because we're the real threat, okay? Whether they want to admit it or not, we're the real threat. This is Genesis 49:9. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? And you got a little bit of a glimpse of it in 2020 with George Floyd. And you have the most recent example of this guy's father crashing out and running over a police officer, okay? And what Esau tried to do when they sentenced him to be arraigned or to have his court hearing, you know, the whole courtroom was filled with cops because they tried to intimidate him. You know, they tried to basically scare him and make him feel some type of way. But you can tell he wasn't having it. He didn't care. You know, and that's where we are today. And prophecy speaks, and I'll get it in a second. Once Judah gets up, everybody's up. And by everybody, I mean all the tribes, the so-called Latinos, the so-called Native Americans. Okay, all of the tribes are going to get up. And what Esau failed to realize is when the whole George Floyd protest happened back in 2020, the whole world lit up. All of the tribes around the world, they were protesting and turning things up over that, man. Now, the CIA did spark it and did foment it, but I personally believe they were not expecting that big of a reaction, you know, because when things get restless, things become uncertain, people don't know where their next meal is coming from. You know, people turn up, man, because people have already had it, and now the conditions are perfect because you have inflation is still whooping everybody's ass. They can't afford anything, you know. STDs are at an all-time high. Women are out of order. You know, you can't afford anything, man. You know, so it comes to a point where, how long are you gonna suffer the wicked to rule over you? If the one thing that you were benefiting from was this little comfort that you get, and now that's being taken away, well, now it's getting to a point where they're getting sick and tired of it. All right. It says, well, there's another one. Well, actually, let me go back to the Genesis 49 real quick. I'm gonna go back up. Let me see. Genesis 49:8. Judah, thou art he whom my brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. That's a prophecy, okay? And Judah was not yet the head tribe, but spiritually speaking, he became the head tribe, because that's who that's the lineage the Lord chose the righteous line to be out of. Now, all of the Israelites are among the elect or the righteous, but there's a select one, the house of David, who came, you know, and had his throne established forever, which Yahushua came out of. All right, and it says, thy brethren, Salakia, thy brethren shall praise, thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies, thy father's children shall bow down before thee. So they're the other tribes, okay, they're gonna be under Judah, which means this is where the Lord basically is declaring through a prophecy of his chosen one, Jacob, to profess that Judah would be the head tribe. Okay, it says, thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp from the prey, my son, thou art gone up. All right. It says, he stooped down and couched as a lion and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? In the NLT, it says, Judah, my son, is a young lion that has finished eating his prey. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down, like a lioness, who dares to rouse him up? And so we've been crouched down since Jim Crow, okay? Since the civil rights era. Because what Esau doesn't tell you is that if he kept bombing those cities, okay, if he kept destroying our land and taking over areas like Black Wall Street, we weren't going to have a choice but to fight Esau, okay? And that's one thing that he didn't want to do. So prophecy had it go this direction, okay, where he offered you trinkets, you know, to pacify your anger and distract you, while he robs the rest of the world blind, you know. But verse 10, it says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. Okay, and Shiloh is Yahushua, man. All right, so Judah will be the lead tribe to spark this thing off. And when you see so-called black men get fed up, all right, you know who's going to end feminism? The so-called black man. Okay, when he's doing it now, actually, okay, when he rebukes the so-called black woman for her out of order behavior, okay, all of these other women are going to get in line, you know, because Eve, who you refer to as the so-called black woman, okay, she followed the ways of the so-called white woman, okay, down this path, okay. So we're going to rebuke her, and in turn rebuke all the women that are out of order, man. It's all going to fall in line, you know, and the same thing is going to be for the wicked that rule, okay? It says, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. All right? So there it is. Now, get it here. This is Isaiah chapter 11. Okay, now let me go down to see here. Yep, Isaiah chapter 11 verse 10. I'm gonna start at verse 10. It says, and in that day there shall be a root of Jesse. Okay, Jesse is the father of King David. All right, and it says, he shall stand for an ensign of the people. What's an ensign? Okay, it's a banner, a sign. Okay, so we're gonna be the flagship of rebellion in this society. Now, I don't mean, you know, us as Israelites are gonna go out there and get carnal, but you're gonna see the so-called black man basically lose it. Okay, and that's gonna be all he needs to establish his means and a reason for violence. Okay, because Trump has already signed the executive order. Okay, and what they're doing is they're poking and prodding you. They have been for the past several decades. Okay. And then been passing legislation to justify on destroying you, okay? Because they broke the so-called laws, but all the laws here are unjust, and they knew that, man. Okay, it's legal for them to sell you opioids and then put poison in the American food supply chain because they can get the FDA to approve it, and boom, it's legal. But if you sell a plant that grows out of the earth that he didn't authorize, guess what? He can lock you up, man. 10, 20, 30 years some jakes are doing, you know. But going back, Isaiah chapter 11, verse 10 again, and in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. Okay, so just like, you know, I keep giving the example of George Floyd, where everybody stood up and they was rioting because really people are already tired. They're sick and tired. When that guy Luigi, forget his last name, it's Magione or something like that, Luigi that killed the CEO of United Healthcare. Okay, everybody was cheering that guy, man. They still are. Okay, because and the elites got kind of scared and got kind of worried, because they thought the spell that they're putting over people in media and social media and lulling them to sleep and distracting them, they thought it was more powerful than what it really was, but it's not, because what's more primal than anything is people's ability to eat. Okay, a man's ability to procreate. When you got all of these young guys around, they can't get any women, they can't get laid, you know. Those are primal needs that you got to be able to feed. See, what's different now in the bread and circus of the ancient world versus the bread and circus now is back then, those men could get wives, okay, in the ancient Roman Empire, okay? They could work hard and get a woman, and their women would be way more in order back then than they are now. But now, you can't tell them nothing, man, okay? So they don't get women, and now the food, groceries is expensive as hell, so everything's drying up. So what do you think? Where do you think this is gonna go? People are not gonna have any other recourse but to lash out. All right. And so when Luigi killed him, they thought that people. I saw a lot of people on the news. They were you know, using these talking points about, you know, how it's never justified to do this and do that. But y'all killed y'all own American citizens, man. Okay, you passed the Patriot Act. You labeled them as enemy combatants, and boom, you can do whatever you want to them, take away their rights. Okay, y'all had no issue doing that, but as soon as one wicked CEO gets put down, they're crying. Okay, you could tell they look worried, you know, because they don't want people to be desensitized to violence of the elites. They want you to be desensitized to violence of each other, just like they want Jake to be desensitized to violence in the hood. They want you to not look twice if somebody get aired out, man. You know? Because right now, Esau can step in any hood right now and he'll be safe. You know, but if somebody looks like us walk in the hood, they better know where you from. Okay, they better know what your business is there, or it's gonna be a problem. And see, that whole dynamic is changing now. People are starting to rally together, and that's what it says here in the NLT. Isaiah 11 and 10 in the NLT. In that day, heir to David's throne will be a banner of salvation to all the world. The nations will rally to him, and the land where he lives will be a glorious place. So this is what you see going on, because we are the #1 symbol of oppression here, man. Okay, everybody knows that the so-called black man is at the very bottom. Okay, so when people, when any other nation, even other heathen nations that are so-called minorities, when they want to do something, what will they do? They'll get Jake to go out there and march or do something else, and then they'll piggyback behind it. You know, Jake will get funding for this or a grant for that, and then boom, you got, Moabites behind you, East Indians behind you, Ishmael's behind you, trying to get the same benefits. And now they benefit more off of the efforts from your civil rights than you do. Okay? Because everybody knows we're the #1 symbol of the oppressed. Okay? And this is why you have Amalek working overtime to try to make himself the most oppressed. Okay? And you're not. Okay? Sit your ass down. And it says, verse 11, it says, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria. So the Lord is going to come back to get us. And this time, okay, where the Lord is going to come back, he's going to redeem us. But the remnant of us, the 2/3 are going to die here, man. And a lot of the people that are going to be turning up and rebelling are going to be 2/3, okay? You're going to serve your purpose by rioting and going to war with these Edomites that have all of these militias, and then you're going to be out of there, all right? It says, from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the outcast of Israel. Who are the outcasts? Okay, yeah, we're at war, not war, but we're at odds with each other right now. So-called Latinos, so-called Native Americans. But there's gonna come a day very soon where we're gonna link up. All right, we're gonna remember ourselves. Okay, it says, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the 4 corners of the earth. And this is why the internet is so important, man. It does a lot of the heavy lifting. How did the George Floyd protests ignite the entire world that quickly? Through the internet. Okay, people in Europe were rioting, in Germany, all right, South Africa, Australia, all right. It was everywhere, man. How did that happen? Over one nigga getting put down. It was George Floyd. He wasn't right, man. He was a nigga, man. But the point is that that's all it took. Okay. It says, verse 13, the envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. All right. So we're going to be in a time where Esau is not going to be able to do his thing anymore, man. Okay. It says, Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. So we're gonna put our differences aside. Ephraim represents the northern kingdom, okay, which are basically the Latin tribes, all right, and the Native American tribes. All right, it says, but they shall fly upon the shoulders of the Philistines toward the west. They shall spoil them from the east together. They shall lay their hand upon Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. All right, that's spiritual, man. Okay, because those represent the other heathen. And who has more than you in this society, more than anybody? The Edomites, the Moabites, the Ammonites. I would include Ishmael in there. Okay. I would include Elam in there, who are the East Indians. It says, and the Lord Yahweh shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea with his mighty wind, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod. Okay. Now, when you go over to this one, and I'll end it here, because that guy had a spirit on him, man. I watched that dude that had his son killed. He wasn't having it, you know. And I saw the guy on the Philip Scott show. He said he should plead temporary insanity because it was only a couple hours between when he saw his son's body versus when he ran over that police officer. Okay. Okay. You see here. Zechariah chapter 9. And 12, it says, turn you to the stronghold, ye prisoners of hope. Who are the prisoners of hope? The Israelites that are trapped here, man, that are serving out our sentence. Okay, because America is a plantation. All right, it's a big mall that we have to work at, that where we can't own anything. We can just trade things. Okay. It says, turn you to the strongholds, ye prisoners of hope. Even today do I declare that I will render double unto thee. All right. In the NLT, it says, come back to the place of safety, all you prisoners who still have hope. I promise this very day that I will repay 2 blessings for each of your troubles. Okay. So this is the time where the curses lift off of us and go up on the heathen. Okay. And it says, verse 13, when I have bent Judah for me. What does bent mean? When you bend the bow, that puts tension onto the bow. Now, depending on how many pounds of force it takes to bend the bow at a certain length, that'll determine how far the arrow goes and how fast it goes, how much power is behind it, and you put that tension behind it. Okay. So Judah is the tension buildup, man. We're the spectacle that everybody watches get shit on here, man. Okay. But it's getting to a boiling point. And it says, when I have bent Judah for me and filled the bow with Ephraim. What does that mean? Okay, so that tension, the numbers are going to be filled up with the northern kingdom. Okay, that's what the Lord promised. Okay, and it says, and raised up thy sons, O Zion, against thy sons, O Greece, and made thee as a sword of a mighty man. So who are the Greeks? You know, though that represents Esau, Edom. Okay, and I believe I can prove that real quick. Let me see. What is it? Give me 1 second. Where is it? It's in Joel and Amos. I know. Let's see here. Yep. Yep, Joel 3 and 4. Yea, what have ye to do with me, Tyre and Zidon, and all the coast of Palestine, will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried it into your temples, my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, okay, that ye might remove them far from their border. Now, what's far from the border of the Greeks? This is talking about America, okay, because the same people, they renamed themselves, all right. The ancient Greek Empire is reincarnated, or I guess it transformed into the Roman Empire, which is a reincarnation of America. And you can see remnants of the Greek Empire all over the place. Okay, democracy, the term democracy comes from Greece. Okay, when doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, that goes back to a Greek man named Hippocrates, man. Okay, all of the language, 40% of the English lexicon, of the vocabulary in the English lexicon is Greek. The other 40% is Latin, and the rest of it is Germanic, you know. Okay. So the Greeks, that's who we were sold to, okay? And when you go to Amos 1:9, it says, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus, and for 4, the same people that sold us, okay, Tyre and Zidon, okay, it says, and for 4, and I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom. Okay, so there it says Edom, and the other part it says the Grecians. Okay, so when you go back to Zechariah 9:13, it says, when I have bent Judah for me, filled the bow with Ephraim, and raised up thy sons, O Zion, against thy sons, O Greece. Who is it talking about? Okay, it says, and made thee as the sword of a mighty man. All right, because when it comes to warfare and battle, nobody is messing with the Israelites, man. Okay, there's a reason you were given the sword, and why the sword is your blessing, because you don't have hands. Okay, that's why. Okay, you're not really good at fighting, and so the Lord gave you the blessing to create sword. He made you the artificer. Okay, you can create all these weapons, missiles, and things of that nature. Okay, that's your blessing. But the Lord is gonna neutralize your advantage. Okay, and that's what we see going on right now with all of these plagues flying around. You know, it says, verse 14, I'll end it here, and the Lord Yahweh shall be seen over them, and his arrow shall go forth as the lightning, and the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai shall blow the trumpet, and shall go with the whirlwinds of the south. All right, so when that trumpet blows, that signifies when the missiles are on the way. Okay, so that's the time that we're in. You know, Jake is getting fed up, man. Anyway, ending it there. Lord willing, this is edifying. Call halal Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Hashem Rachak V'dah Shalom. Kwam Yasharallah.